My name is Nelly, and I will be the moderator on behalf of UniMy Prep team. Our speaker today is Shimri Winters, who is head of ARINGO MBA Admission consulting firm, and he has worked with hundreds of top 10 MBA applicants. So I'm very excited to hear what he has to share, and I'm sure he can give us many useful tips. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A box, and he will take the time to answer at the end of the session. If you have any problems with sound or presentation, you can switch to Zoom up by clicking the button on the left corner of your screens. I think everything is set, and we can start now. So I give the floor to Shimri.
Thanks, Nelly. So first of all, thanks UniMy Prep for hosting us. And this session will also go on YouTube, so whoever misses it can view the YouTube. This session will talk about how to get into top MBA programs, and I'll give a few strategies. So let me just present the agenda, which before I present myself. And the agenda is quite long, and I actually split this session into three. So the three topics will be some general information. And if you don't know anything about top MBA programs and are thinking of applying in 2-3 years and just want some general information, the first session is for you, the first section. So the next 15 minutes, I'm going to run through this very, very quickly. It's going to be a lot of data, but I'm going to run through it very quickly so we can get to the second part of this presentation, which is specific tips on how to get into a top MBA program. So if you're a more advanced applicant, you're thinking of applying next year or this year, that section is more for you, and definitely stay for that section as well. I'll try and do that a bit slower. And then the third part will be open floor. And if there's any questions, if there aren't, I'll try and think of questions myself and answer them. That will be the third section. Okay, I think we need, I think we can start. So just to introduce myself, my name is Shimri Winters. I head the Ringo MBA Admission Consulting Strategy team. I'm a London Business School MBA graduate. Before London Business School, I did an undergraduate in computer science, and I worked as a programmer for a big IT company. Post my MBA, I worked in consulting, and then in various business development roles for big IT companies. And I've been at ARINGO now for 8 years, full time. This is what I do. This is what we do. And that's it. This is the only marketing slide I have for ARINGO. We help candidates get into top 10 programs. We're very, very good. Wow, I'm very good at marketing. That's it. Right, so you've seen the agenda. Three sections for this presentation. Let's start with the general information. And again, my strategy here is going to be to run through a lot of data very quickly. You have the Q&A, you have the chat. Just ask questions if you want as we go along. And again, I will address everything. Okay, so why do you even want to do a top 10 MBA program? And most of the candidates I speak to are probably career switchers. You're a lawyer or an accountant, and you accompany firms today from a legal or accounting perspective, but you want to lead business transactions, not just accompany them. Or you're a programmer like I was, and you want to do more business roles like a product manager or business development manager, or work for a venture capital fund. So these are career switches, people who want to work in consulting like I did post my MBA. So these are reasons for going to do an MBA, a career switcher. I also see a lot of accelerators. Accelerators is someone who is actually happy in the industry they're in. Okay, they're very successful lawyers, but right now they're associates and they want to be partners or the next level. And they want a top 10 MBA because this will give them an advantage, an extra edge on their peers. Plus, it will give them a lot of knowledge. Plus, a brand of a famous school, etc. So they want to stay where they are, but they just want to accelerate. A third type of candidates that I've seen and worked with are future entrepreneurs, people who know they want to be an entrepreneur, open a company, maybe run a company, but but they don't exactly know how to do it. They don't necessarily have an idea today of an app that they want to develop or of a services company that they want to open. And if they have the idea, they don't know how to do that. And an MBA definitely gives, a lot of data on how to do that, a lot, a good solid education background, very solid network, of course, a famous brand, and a lot of knowledge on how to be an entrepreneur. Some people contact me and they say they want an MBA because they then want to go and work in the academia. They want to be lecturers or professors. And I have to admit, an MBA is not a classic route in that regards, because usually an MBA doesn't have a thesis. It's not a degree that leads very easily to a PhD. And generally speaking, it's quite hard to get into. So if your dream is to be a professor somewhere, I think you can, I'm not saying don't do an MBA, but there might be easier ways to then go and work in academia, and different degrees that might be more easy to get into and specialize for the actual topic that you want to specialize in. So you might want to go and do a PhD in sociological, whatever, organization behavior, I don't know, in something very specific. And I'm not sure an MBA is what you're looking for. So again, if someone is thinking of doing a top 10 MBA, from the various reasons we discussed, again, great idea, I did it. Very good salaries, very easy career switching opportunities. It's very difficult to do career switching generally. Okay, a programmer can't go and it's more difficult for me to go to a consulting firm and say, hire me. But with an MBA, it kind of goes without saying. Most MBAs are in another country. So if you're an international candidate and want to go and study in the US or in Europe or in Asia, you might have a strong international experience. The class is very diverse. Even if you're going to study in your country, the class will be very international. And of course, it opens doors to employers and perhaps employers in various countries. And the last thing, it's a lot of fun. I wanted to say it's a bit like a child in a toy shop or candy shop or whatever you want to think about it. There's so many electives, so many courses, so many new ideas, new friends. It's just amazing. And there aren't many other opportunities for you to invest in yourself a year or 2 years in this kind of stimulating intellectual way. So lots of reasons to do a top 10 MBA. Now let's talk a bit about, where do you work at the end? So this is a slide I took from London Business School. These are recruiters that came to London Business School, I think 2 years ago. It says here there were over 300 companies that came to recruit from London Business School. London Business School has approximately, it changed a bit, but there are approximately 500 students. Now a year, a lot of these companies recruited more than one student. So if you do the math very quickly, you can see that there's more work than students, okay? So you will find a job at the end of your MBA program. You can check this out in all the rankings. All schools publish how many students found a job within 3 months. The numbers are between 93 and 97% in all top business schools. So you will find a job in perhaps one of these companies or a different one. A lot of these jobs are management rotation programs. So it's a very generalist job. For example, Burger King, the job that they recruited 2 years ago, you started 6 months in strategy, then 6 months in real estate, then 6 months in helping them develop new branches in a different country. And then after 2 years of doing 6 months in finance, and then after 2 years, you kind of sit down with them and decide where you want to work. So there's a lot of big companies that just come to recruit MBAs as for future management. And there's a lot of companies who recruit for specific roles. For example, consulting firms recruit consultants, investment banking recruit directly. A lot of tech giants recruit for a number of roles, but a lot of them are product managers, for example. So that's it. I think you'll also see that although this slide is from London Business School and I studied at London, a lot of these companies are, American or international, and you will see very similar recruiters at the top European and the top Asian and even the top Canadian business schools, as you will see from the top US schools. Okay, let's talk a bit about, so what is a top MBA and where can I find like the top 10 MBA programs? Well, although I do have a computer science degree and I think I'm quite good at math, I'm going to tell you a little secret. There's actually around 30 top 10 MBA programs. Yes, the math is very problematic, but the reason is there's more than one top MBA ranking. Okay, now if I look at the top US schools, I can definitely look at US News ranking, for example, and I will see top US schools: Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, Chicago, Columbia, MIT, etc., Kellogg, and those would be ranked in the top 7. And on the other hand, if I look at the Financial Times ranking, I will also see some of those business schools in the top 10, but I might see INSEAD, which is ranked 1, or London Business School, which is ranked 2 in the world, or HEC Paris, etc., etc. So all these are great schools. And if I look in the Economist, or if I look in Forbes or in Bloomberg, I'll actually see different rankings. Now, a lot of the schools will repeat themselves. So you can do the ranking of rankings, etc. Soon I'll try and persuade you that it's not that important. But actually, there's quite a lot of top schools. So those are the top schools. And with what are the top schools? Well, I put here as biggest logos as I could. I think most of us do know the top US schools. And the reason is they're very big in everything. Okay, so I know nothing about psychology. I know nothing about being a dentist. But I'm sure that Harvard are good in both of those. Okay, I know nothing about journalism, but I'm sure Cornell is a good place to learn journalism. So a lot of the top US schools, or probably all of them, are very good and very known for a lot of things. Okay, so my mother doesn't know anything about MBAs. She'll know UCLA. Okay, this is a bit different in the European school. Most of the European schools are very small. They only teach MBAs. And sometimes a lot of my candidates say, well, I don't want to spend all this money on a school no one's heard of, like INSEAD. Well, what's important is the recruiters know INSEAD. People who need to know, the top schools. And you just need to keep in mind that you might not come from an industry that has a lot of MBAs in it, but the top European schools are very famous for industries that recruit MBAs, like consulting, investment banking, or other industries. And these are excellent schools as well. So these are some of the European schools. So I always like to kind of touch the differences. Like we said, the US schools are just very big and famous and everything. Most of the US schools are 2 years. And most of the European schools are 1 to 1.5 years. And in Europe, there's more foreigners in the class. Okay, that's also something that I think you should consider. And the ultimate decision is actually, where do you want to study? And maybe where do you want to work afterwards? Now, I'm already getting some questions in the Q&A. Thank you for that. I'm just reminding you, we have 3 sections. So I'm halfway through the first section, which is very general information. And then the second section will actually answer your question on the Q&A, which is, how do you stand out? And I'll show you some strategies on how to get into the top MBA programs. So just a few myths. For example, you can try now in the Q&A just to answer if you want. Which school last year had the highest pay for its students? Okay, I'll give you a few seconds. You can shout out at the screen if you want. Okay, so usually when I have this session live, I get Harvard, Stanford, INSEAD, whatever. So according to one statistic that I think Poets and Quants did, it was actually MIT. Wow, this is so interesting that MIT alumni were paid $100 more than Harvard alumni. Who cares? Same salary, right? $100 a year. Okay, so I'm just trying to show you that there's some myths that are just not true. A lot of people tell me, I only want to study in Harvard because I'll get a high salary. Well, here's proof that actually MIT salary was higher. Here's another one. What's the highest ranked MBA program in Europe? Well, I kind of showed you before. I said, INSEAD and London Business School. So in this specific statistic, they said London Business School, and they actually pointed out that HEC Paris as the second top ranked business school. And who cares? Okay, there's a lot of top schools. Like I told you, there might be 30 top schools in the top 10, and they're all good. And I'll show you soon salaries, etc. You will probably get to the same recruiter, the same salary, also from London Business School and also from INSEAD. Just last myth. So where would the interns, there's an internship in the US, okay? Where would they pay the highest salary last year? So internships, they do an internship, first year, second year, they were paid money. So again, I get Harvard, No, MIT, because they were paid the most. No, I think actually Wharton, because there's a lot of finance there. Well, actually, last year's it was Stern, NYU Stern, and they were paid $100 more a month than Harvard or whatever. Now, let me tell you the reason for this, because most of NYU's interns did an internship in New York, where salaries are a tiny bit higher than in Boston. Okay, does this mean anything? Not much. It just means NYU is a great school and Harvard and Stanford are great schools as well. So be careful from these myths. Okay, don't think that only one top school or three top schools are very good. There's a lot of top schools. And when you come to consider a school, I want you to take in mind two key factors. One is the location. Okay, that's a key factor. Okay, because London Business School is a fantastic school and Stanford is a fantastic school. And they probably teach very, very similar courses. And the recruiters might be very similar. And the key difference is London and San Francisco. Okay, another big factor is what do you want to do post MBA? And again, it's hard to deny that Stanford is in California, and that leads perhaps to living in California with certain jobs. And if you're looking for finance, perhaps Columbia, which is in New York, will serve your aspirations better. But Stanford has finance and Columbia also has tech. So be careful from these stigmas. But here are a few other factors to consider. Again, my key factor is location. And usually my second key factor is what's the ranking of the school. Okay, but still, if you're looking for a very specific recruiter, you want to work at Uber and you know where the headquarters are, yes, there is a small advantage in studying near Uber. Okay, so that's how you choose between business schools. Let's continue. What do you need to apply? Again, we're nearly done with the general part of this presentation. So applying to business school is actually quite a long process. There's 4 prerequisites. In most schools, all the US schools and most of the European schools, you'll need an undergraduate degree. I think that makes sense. This is a master's program, so you will need an undergraduate degree. I have about 3 candidates here without an undergraduate degree, and there's very specific schools that you can get into without an undergraduate degree as well. You will need to pay some kind of registration fee. It can be around $200. You would need a TOEFL if English is not your first language, and you will need a GMAT. Okay, so once you have these 4 prerequisites, then you can actually apply. And then to apply, you need 4 things, which is a CV, a lot of essays. NCAD has 7 essays, and 2 recommendations. And there's also an online application. So as you can see, it's a very long process. And this process is per school. So you probably need around 3 months to work on your applications. Okay, just one word about GMATs, because I know it's a touchy subject. The GMATs are very high in the top schools. The average GMAT is 730 in the top US schools and around 710 in the top European schools. So very high GMAT. You can see the GRE equivalent as well. GPA is also high. And all the 7 areas, which I'll show you shortly on how to create, the best application you can overcome some kind of shortage. So if you have a low GMAT or a low GPA, or you don't have a lot of work experience, but you can stand out in your application, you can definitely overcome that and get into a top school. So listen to the to the next section. I just wanted, again, another word about the GMAT. The GMAT's very important, but it's not the only factor. When I used to interview for London Business School, I used to interview for 7 years. I didn't accept someone who had a 780. So he had a great GMAT, but he wasn't a good candidate. And on the other hand, this year, Ringo had a 610 that got into London Business School, a 630 that got into NCAD. We had a 660 get into Wharton. We had the 700 get into Wharton with a scholarship. We had the 680 get into MIT. Okay, so we had lots and lots of candidates with lowish GMAT get into a top school because GMAT is not the only factor. Okay, it's a very important factor, but it's not the only one. Okay, that was the first part of the section of this presentation, the first part where we just went over very general information about top business schools. Wow, quarter of an hour, good, a bit more. Okay, now the next section, I'll give you 7 strategies on how to get into a top business school and what can you do to stand out in your application? So I can see one of the questions on the chat was, how do you stand out? Great, thank you for that. We'll answer that. And I'll answer the other questions on the after the second section and the Q&A section. Okay, so before we go into 7 strategies, I wanted to go through what do you think business schools are looking for? I'll tell you. So I'm going to try and go here clockwise, and I'll start with this purple one on the side, academic. So we already said, GMAT can be around 30% of your applications. Very, very important. Your undergraduate degree around 10% as well. So together, academia-wise, yes, this is important for the schools. Remember, an MBA is a degree. So first of all, they want to make sure you can, you're academic enough and you can complete the degree. So you have to show that. Second of all is vision. The business schools want to see people who have worked somewhere and have a clear vision where they want to work in the future and why they need the MBA for that. Let me give you a good example, let's start with a bad example. A waiter who then became a shift manager, who became whatever the next thing after a shift manager is, a restaurant, a whole restaurant manager, who says he wants to go to Wharton because he wants to be an investment banker. Okay, that's a very bad example. You've been working 6 years in a restaurant. Why didn't you work in a bank? Okay. On the other hand, if that restaurant enthusiastic candidate says he wants an MBA from Colombia because he wants to open a restaurant and a chain of restaurants, and he wants to continue to the hospitality business, that makes more sense. Okay, so there's a clear vision and there's a connection between your past and your future, and maybe why MBA, because he wants to learn about entrepreneurship and microeconomics and I don't know how to get the investors to invest in his idea. So that makes sense. That's a clear vision. School interests are very important. The schools want to make sure you want to study there. You can't take your Columbia application and copy and paste that to Chicago Booth. No, you have to show a lot of school interest, and we'll soon show how to do that, but that's very important. If you've managed people at work, very important to mention that. If you haven't managed people at work, if you have some kind of leadership experience, it can be from university, it can be from high school, it can be from your extracurricular activities. You were captain of the football team. It's very important to show that you have leadership potential. If you have international exposure, this is very important. Some schools put a lot of emphasis on this. On the other hand, not a lot of candidates went to relocation somewhere for 3 years. So if you have something, show it, even if it was, travel to 10 countries, backpacked somewhere, or worked with an international team. This is important. The next two are kind of softer things, and it's very hard to show them. So broad horizons is something very interesting. I used to interview for London Business School, like I said, and I used to look at, academic experience, very important. And I used to look at professional experience, that's very important. But you remember, I had a 780 and he had a good professional experience. But then I just used to look for something else. Would I like this person to be with me in the class? Is he interesting? Will he add value? Now, if this person didn't do anything apart from his professional experience, that's very boring. Okay, now, not everybody went and built an orphanage in Africa. And not everybody climbed up the Himalaya, okay? So, broad horizons doesn't mean you're a Nobel Prize winner, but it does mean you have some hobbies, you have volunteered somewhere, you do something extra, and it's interesting. You're an interesting person. I would like to talk to you over a beer. And same with smart and dependable. It's very hard to show a bullet in your CV that shows that you're smart, okay? Same with dependable, but can definitely show in the essay that when your manager went on maternity leave, she or he gave you a lot of responsibilities. Okay, so that does show that you're dependable. They trusted you to do something beyond your job, for example. And smart just means that you've managed to, maybe progress faster than others or do more things in parallel, etc. So that's what business schools are looking for. And now I'm going to show my 7 strategies on things that you can do to upgrade your MBA application. Again, if you're a beginner and only thinking about an MBA in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you can drop this session now, because this is for more advanced people that actually are going to apply in the next year or 2. So let's start with the CV. Okay, How can you write a stellar CV, one that makes you stand out? And there's something that we call MBA language. Okay, it's really strange. I actually have a candidate who we just did one session on his CV, and he wrote back to us and he said, "Listen, you're really not good, Ringo. All the changes that you did and all the suggestions you made to my CV are grammatically wrong." Okay, because instead of saying I am doing this and this at work, we suggested that he puts led 3 people, which is grammatically wrong. But that's kind of an MBA language. An MBA CV speaks about accomplishments. It doesn't show what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and what you learn out of it. It just shows what your biggest accomplishment. I'll give you an example for me. I used to be a programmer, and I'm assuming my programming CV said, I work daily in Java, okay? Or I know to program in C++, okay? That makes sense. I used to be a programmer. But my MBA CV said led 2 people, worked on a project worth $10 million. Okay, so that's an MBA CV. It talks a lot about your achievements. It's obviously connected very well to the goals. Remember, with the restaurant manager, owner, whatever he was, waiter, manager, owner. If he has some kind of interest in finance, although I said that's not a good idea, he should show that he was in the finance club in university, for example, some kind of finance interest. And of course, try and show which company you work in, your responsibilities, etc., in a very clear way. I know you work for a bank and everybody knows HSBC, still just explain what you do and maybe even what the bank does. And there's a little lawyer's example here as well. So that's regarding the CV, make it stand out. Okay, tip number 2, remember the vision is so important. How do you find your goal? Well, first of all, they have to make sense, okay? And I always tell my candidates, close your eyes. Where do you see yourself in 10, 15 years? And then when they say, well, either an astronaut or the CEO of Google, I say, okay, calm down a bit. Open your eyes, have your tea, close them. Okay, where do you see yourself a bit more realistic? And then they say, okay, not the CEO of Google, but maybe a VP in some kind of high-tech company, or maybe found my own company in cybersecurity. And then I say, okay, open your eyes. Great, that's a great goal. I can see that happening. Now let's think, how can you get there? So far, you've had 6 years in cybersecurity engineering. After the MBA, you'll have a lot of business skills. Maybe you go and work as a business development manager in cybersecurity, and then you found your own company. Okay, so that's how you connect your goals. You can think very ambitiously, but then think, how will your past, what will the MBA, and what will your future career goals all be connected nicely for this long-term career goal? Okay, so again, this is very, very important, because you'll have to explain to the school why you want the MBA for this career goal. That's my second tip about the goals. See, we're moving really fast. Networking. Do you remember schools really, really, really want to make sure that you want to apply to that specific school? The way to do this is to know people from the school. Now, I don't know anyone from Duke. What do I do? Well, go on LinkedIn and find someone from Duke. Go on the school's website. Look for clubs that you're interested in. Okay, I work in the automobile industry. I work in fashion and luxury goods industry. Go to that specific club, find the ambassador, contact them. Find people from your previous jobs, find people from your country, find people that your girlfriend knows. Okay, you can find people. You can also write to the school, write to the professors, attend MBA fairs, visit campus if COVID ever finishes. So definitely do a lot of research on the school. This is vital. Again, do not copy and paste one application to another. Show the schools that you're really, really interested in their specific program. Okay, you can keep asking questions. We're nearly done. We're halfway through my 7 tips, and I'll answer all the questions afterwards. So the 4th strategy to improve your application for top MBA programs. Okay, so there's essays. Okay, and remember, NCEA had 7 essays. Stanford last year with the optional essay, 5 essays. Harvard has 1. Essays are vital. Now, there's a lot of ways to answer an essay. The first thing I always say is think. Okay, let's think what we do. Duke, have a very interesting essay. Tell me 25 random things about yourself. Okay, the worst thing you can do is write down 25 random things. No, let's strategize first. Let's think, what do I want to do in this essay? What do I want Duke to understand about me after I write them 25 random things? Okay, thing number one, I want them to think I'm very professional. Thing number two, I'm very academic. Thing number three, that I have a sense of humor. Okay, now let's tell them random things, which are not random, that will prove these things. Bullet number one, I was on the dean's list in 4 out of 5 semesters. So I'm very academic. Bullet number two, I got a promotion faster than my peers. Wow, I'm very professional. Bullet number three, I once wrote a stand-up sketch, and I didn't do this, and I performed in front of a crowd, and it was a big success. Wow, I have a sense of humor. Okay, so here I managed to answer in the essay the things I strategized before. Okay, now it sounds a bit strange. Make sure you answer the question. A lot of people kind of get drifted in the essay. Stanford has a very interesting essay. What matters most to you and why? Now, this can take you in so many directions. And I have people that started the essay by telling the school about their grandparents, and maybe they were immigrants and they immigrated somewhere, etc., which really was a fascinating story, but it just didn't answer the question. And I had people that answered the same question, my biggest job achievement is that I work as an auditor for Ernst & Young, and the report came out on time. And like, this is an amazing achievement story, but it doesn't answer the question. So always remember to answer the question. Okay, now you can go out of the boundaries of the question, but stay kind of tied to what you're trying to say, and does it answer the question? And kind of, I know MBAs are all about achievements, okay? But you can see here the Berkeley Haas value, okay? Don't blow on your own trumpet. Don't say, oh, I'm so good, I'm so amazing, I'm so this, I'm so that. No, let the facts say that for you, okay? So stay modest. So that's a bit about the essays. We discussed about not recycling, okay? Schools want to see a lot of interest in their specific school. Hope you're enjoying these nice pictures on the right. That's good. Okay, tip number 5 out of 7. Okay, how do you use recommendations? Every MBA application will ask for 1 or 2 recommendations. First of all, the schools prefer, this is optional, but they prefer professional recommendations, not academic recommendations. Second thing is they prefer direct managers or people that know you on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of this is one of the most popular questions I get. Should I use my manager or should I use my manager's manager? Okay, so my manager knows me on a day-to-day basis. Amazing. Okay, he's my best friend. He'll write the best recommendation. My manager's manager is the CEO or he's the VP or whatever. He's just more, he has a nicer title to mention. So what's better? And their answer is, it's better someone who actually knows you. Okay, and even if you know some kind of celebrity minister of agriculture because he knows your family, but you've never worked with him, don't use that recommender. You really want to use someone who knows you on a professional basis and more in a day-to-day activity, who can compare you to your peers and can say, he's the best. Choose your recommender very carefully, okay? And sometimes you can actually strategize in advance and think, okay, I told Duke I have a sense of humor. I didn't find a good story about how I replaced my manager when she went on maternity leave. I'll actually use her as my recommender and she'll mention that. Amazing. So she and I are not overlapping. She's actually complementing my story with another angle of how excellent I am. Okay, so you can strategize before who you think your best recommender will be based on the relationship with you and what story you think they might say. A recommendation is very different than your essay. Remember in the essay, I kind of told you, be humble. Okay, don't use I'm the best, I'm the best. A recommendation can be very different. It can be completely subjective. I manage 10 people. Shimri is the best. Okay, it can be subjective and it can be in that kind of language. Recommendations are very, very detailed. A London Business School recommendation is 5 questions times 500 words. That means more than 2,000 words for a recommendation. Now, if you're asking a recommender to recommend you for 5 schools, that's a lot of work. Yes, 2,000 words times 5. So choose your recommenders very, very carefully. And I put here a tip, help them to help you. You know, meet with them in advance, send them a few bullets on you and just say like, reminder, I was the best in this. Reminder, I had all the social activities. Reminder, last year you gave me a top of something. Okay, try and help them help you. That's a bit about recommendations. We're nearly there. So we have 7 tips on how to get into top MBA programs. And afterwards, our last question from the Q&A. Extracurricular. So maybe you remember my previous slide that showed what schools are looking for. And if you remember, they're looking for academics and for professional experience and leadership, but they're also looking for something else. Be interesting. Now, a lot of people say, listen, I don't volunteer because I have no time. I have lots of hobbies that I do. And I say, great, stop there. That's fine. You don't have to volunteer. You don't have to run marathons. You don't have to do something specific. All we're looking for is for candidates to have some kind of other thing beyond education and professional experience. I worked last year with a fantastic candidate. She got a full scholarship at Chicago Booth, so they thought she was fantastic as well. And she played beach volleyball. Okay, she loved beach volleyball. She wasn't, in any league. She was in a league. She wasn't, professional in any way. On weekends, she used to play beach volleyball. And she just spoke about this a lot. How there weren't a lot of women at the beginning. And she and a couple of friends kind of created a little league, and then it became a bit more serious. And how, and that was amazing. Such a great story. So all we want is for you to be a bit interesting. Of course, if there is some kind of impact on the community, if you did volunteer as a student or today, that's amazing. Definitely mention that. 2 or 3 volunteering activities can be great. Again, don't overwhelm the school with a million things here. They just want to check that you have other interests beyond, your professional activities. Okay, are you ready for my last strategy for MBAs, for top MBAs? And it maybe sounds a bit obvious, but it's not. Google yourself, okay? More and more, my candidates before their interview saying, or actually during when their candidacy is being sent to schools and we know that it's being reviewed by the schools, they say, you won't believe it. I saw in LinkedIn, someone from Colombia looked at your profile. So yes, admissions might Google you or might check you out on LinkedIn. Do it by yourself as well. Now, I think it's fine. Someone asked me, I had a great candidate. She went to USC this year. And she asked me, does she need to remove personal pictures from her holiday on Facebook? Apparently, she was in Greece last year and she has a picture there with a swimming costume. Okay, I think that's fine. Okay, Facebook is a private, non-business platform. It's okay to have your picture with a baby. Okay, again, let's not have any racism remarks and any controversial comments or pictures. Yes, let's calm down about that. But Facebook or some other platform like that, like Instagram, yes, you can definitely have more personal things. But on LinkedIn, for example, which is a more professional platform, yes, I think you should check yourself on LinkedIn, and whatever it says there should be very, very correlated to your CV. Okay, so you can't put on LinkedIn, you're the president of Coca-Cola, and on your CV to say you're unemployed, or vice versa. Okay, usually it's vice versa. That will raise a lot of suspicion to the schools. So Google yourself, check yourself out, make sure your CV and LinkedIn profiles are correlated. Of course, if there's something you can strengthen in your online presence, do it. Again, schools and interviewers will Google you. Okay, I know I'm going to Google myself soon. So those were my 7 strategies on how to get into a top MBA program. There's another nearly marketing slide. So just a bit about ARINGO. We're very good. We help candidates get into top MBA programs We do all the things I mentioned and much more. And you have my details. If anyone is interested, shoot me a line with your CV and your interests, and I can address that in a private way. So that was me. And now we're getting to the third section of the presentation. And what we're going to do is answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Shimri. I think it was a very interesting presentation.
Thanks.
And indeed, we received a few questions in the Q&A box. For our attendees, you still have the time to ask any questions if you wish. And we're going to see now what are the questions. Let's start with the first one that you already mentioned. There is a person interested how to make their presentation a standout, their application a standout.
Of course. So I think we kind of touched that again. Follow this, follow this presentation again. And I think I touched the elements of the application, which are the CV, the recommendations, and the essays. Those are the three, important elements of an application. Try and follow those rules, and think all the time what the business school is looking for. And if you manage to tick those ticks of the box of the business school, you will manage to stand out.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we have an interesting question from an attendee from Russia. They're asking, do you think MBA in USA or Europe is a better fit for them? Someone from Russia.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is only you know. So I think the top MBA programs, okay, let's just take London Business School and Harvard, just for example. Okay, they teach very, very, very similar courses. Actually, the professors move from one school to another. So at London Business School, I had a professor from Wharton, from Stanford, from IESE Barcelona, from Columbia. So the professors move from one school, they teach the same things. And the key difference is where you will live throughout business school, and also where you want to live perhaps after the business school. And I don't think I'll surprise you that most US MBA alumni stay in the US, and most European alumni, and this is not all, but if we try and make it black or white, stay in Europe. So again, I actually checked this recently, and I think 15% or 20%, I can't remember, of NCAD alumni ever actually work in the US. So that's a lot, but still, if you check out how many Harvard alumni work in the US, I think it will be 85% or 90%. So I think that's the main differentiator, which is where do you want to study throughout the MBA, and where do you want to work, or where do you want your context to be after? I'll just say one more sentence about that. Let's say you want to return to Russia. Great. So you want to go and do an MBA 1 or 2 years and return to Russia. But where will your work, which teams will you interact with in the future? For example, if you work in an investment fund and you think it's going to be a European investment fund, either investing in Europe or working with European investors on Russia, then probably a European MBA will help you with connections, and vice versa with the US. So you need to decide where you think your career goals and your aspirations will be served in the best way. Another thing, just write me an email, show me your GMAT and CV, and I'll try and help you. But I think that's kind of the differentiator between Russia and Europe, between the US and Europe.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. It's a very personal choice, and everyone has to decide for themselves. Okay, mentioning GMAT, we have a question. How important is the GMAT result in your opinion?
Yeah, so such a tough question. And again, we'll discuss COVID soon. And this year was quite crazy also in every aspect, but also in terms of GMAT. But if we're looking to a bright future, and hopefully we're all looking forward to not discussing COVID anymore, GMAT is very important, okay? It's one of the most important factors, and let me just explain why. The MBA programs don't know your university. They don't know your degree. It's very, very hard to compare a psychology degree from a top university in France to an engineering degree in a top university in Germany. Okay, these are two very difficult things to compare. And maybe you were Dean's List and he was cum laude, whatever. So the MBA programs came up with one test and they said, you know what? Everybody takes the GMAT. And I want to see on one given test, how much can you score? Now, again, this doesn't mean that if someone scores 700 and someone else 710, that the 710 is better. No, but they just want to see what can you score on this test. So first of all, the GMAT is very important. And as I said before, it can be around 30% of your application. It can be, that can sound a lot or a bit. It depends what you think. Another thing is it's a bit of a threshold as well. All schools will advertise their average GMAT. Like I said, top 10 US schools will be 730. They'll also advertise the median, which is usually like the range. And they'll, let's say Colombia, I think it was like 680 to 780. And I think that means that if you're not a superstar applicant and you have less than 680, your chances are very, very low at Colombia. I'm not saying they're zero, but your chances are low. So first of all, it is very important. And it's important as a threshold. By the way, the higher the GMAT is, the higher your chances also for a scholarship, which is also important. So GMAT is definitely a very important factor.
Great, thank you very much. Another interesting question. A person saying, I have 10 years of experience in retail, but only 2 as a manager. Do you think this is enough to be taken seriously as an applicant?
Okay, thanks for that question. Actually, I've never received that kind of question, so I'll explain why. Business schools look for experienced candidates. I think this is one of the only degrees which nearly every MBA program or all top MBA programs will not accept candidates with less than 2 years of experience, most of them less than 3 years of experience. So first of all, there's a minimum experience. On the other hand, the regular MBA programs are not looking for candidates with too much experience. And let me explain why very quickly. The MBA programs want to find you a job at the end. Why do they want to find you a job? Because it goes into the rankings. Okay, what percentage of candidates I found them a job? By the way, another thing that goes into the rankings is how much money did they make and how much did they manage to double or triple their salaries. Now, that's why I don't want to bring, as an MBA program, I don't want to bring someone too senior, okay? Because I won't manage to double his salary, or it might be hard for me to find him a job. So actually, I would say there is some kind of, not a glass ceiling, but there is some kind of top or cap of years of experience. And if a candidate has more than 12 years of experience, a lot of the MBA programs will tell them, actually, you're too senior or you have too much, you're overqualified, you have too much experience for us. Why don't you try an executive MBA or why don't you try something else, which we can definitely discuss as well. But for a regular MBA program, which is what we discussed so far, you should probably apply now with 10 years of experience because you're actually reaching like the top threshold that schools will look at. In terms of only 2 years as a manager, that's absolutely fine. I've had candidates who have 0 managerial experience. So 2 years are very good. And we can definitely, again, you know, if you have a GMAT, shoot me an email and we can discuss that in private, but all good, you should apply.
Thank you very much. Okay, one very hot question here. Do you think that during the COVID situation, it's reasonable to start an MBA in online mode?
So
I think a lot of people are probably interested in
don't
the
want to
answer.
talk about COVID at all. So let's talk about what happened this year. Okay, this previous year, horrible. Okay, and I think I was going to say most, but I think all schools moved to online at some stage, and some schools moved out into hybrid. Some schools stayed online all year. So this was a horrible year. But this is good for you applicants who are thinking of going, you know, studying for an MBA in the future, because schools learned a lot. I think all of us, but schools learned a lot about how to work in this hybrid model and how to develop a lot of courses online. If I may be optimistic for a minute, I think vaccinations and the number of cases in the locations where the top MBA programs are, for example, the UK or the US, are going down. I'm going to be very optimistic. And you can see the percentage of population which is vaccinated in these locations is very high, and the number of new cases are very low. And therefore, I think most campuses will start on time this September. But all that's relevant for people who already applied last year and got in this year. If you're in this presentation, you haven't even applied yet. And we're talking on the earliest of starting studying in September 2022. Okay, that's in a year. Can we please be optimistic? Let's be optimistic and say, you know, COVID will not be a big problem in 2022. And you know what? We might all wear masks in the class, but still we'll go to class and we won't stay at home. So I'm staying optimistic. I think this year will already, most universities will start kind of as usual. Again, maybe with masks, maybe smaller classes, maybe hybrid, maybe some classes will go online, but the majority of them are just going to start as usual.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I guess our last question, I think it's related to what we are just talking about. Do you think that some of the business schools will extend their deadlines for a third or final round admissions even for 2022?
Yeah. So again, we didn't go into that in detail. Most business schools have 3 deadlines. Again, and there's lots and lots and lots of exceptions. I'm just trying to keep it black and white. The first deadline is in September, 1 year before you start your studies. The second deadline is in January. And we usually try and push our candidates to apply in these deadlines for any school, European or US, because the chances are higher in these first 2 deadlines. Generally speaking, the chances are lower in the third or fourth deadline. So first of all, you want to apply as early as possible. Second of all, if you're asking, do I think can you still apply in April 2000 and whatever 22 for September 22, will that be extended? Well, I don't know. That's in more than a year. I don't think so. I don't think there'll be any reason for schools to change anything this year. I just want to give you a bit of COVID information. A lot of candidates deferred their admission. So let's say you applied to Stanford last year from India or from any other country, and you wanted to start studying in September, but you're in lockdown right now. The embassy is closed. You can't even go and get a student visa. And you won't be able to get a student visa in the next 2 months. Okay, just an example, a very real example that I have right now with a candidate of mine. Let's say you live somewhere else and you caught COVID, or you from any other reason, maybe you didn't even want to apply this year because you're afraid the studies will be online and you want to defer your application to next year. What will happen next year is next year is now, and for studies in 2022, there's going to be a higher number of applicants. If there's a higher number of applicants, the schools, they won't have a problem with candidates. So I don't see any reason why the schools should change anything in their deadlines or make anything easier. Okay, they're going to get just the same numbers or even higher numbers of applicants in round 1 and in round 2. So round 3, the last round, is going to be very competitive. And I don't see any reason why schools will suddenly do something different. Obviously, this can change. Okay, if, for example, in January, there's a huge COVID wave or some other global pandemic, hopefully not, touch wood, and suddenly there's a lot of cancellations or there's a lot of worry for international candidates. And this is what happened last year in round 3, again, a year and a bit ago, where COVID just started, the global wave started very strongly in around March and April. And a lot of schools started panicking that a lot of candidates won't come. And they extended the deadlines. I don't see that happening again. Very long answer for a short question.
I think it was very important information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was all the questions. Thank you for everyone for joining us today. I don't know if you have any final words of wisdom before ending.
I'll think of something. So first of all, thank you for hosting me. I really enjoyed this. I know there's there were some great questions, and I know there's some great candidates watching this video. Again, GMAT is important, but not everything's on the GMAT. So focus on your applications, apply to as many schools as possible. It is going to be a tough year to get into top business schools. It's worth it. So go for it and good luck.